Mm-mm. Good coffee. Good morning. It is 5:15 in the morning here. And then just noticing, Burton, how was your day? It's too early to tell, mate. It's really too early to tell. Not only is it 5:15, but I've been up the last 2 hours because my brain doesn't stop working. Partly because I've been up very early the last 2 days. So I got up super early yesterday morning to go fishing with the kids. I'm going to talk about the holiday activities I've been doing, frankly, because I just don't have a lot of other stuff to talk about. And I think it's kind of interesting. People might find it interesting to know what we do here for our school holidays. But yes, it is very early. Hey, John from Belgium. When are we going to have beers in Belgium again, mate? That is gonna be a while. This is going to be a super casual weekly update this day. This date, oh God, it's early. This day, because there's not a heap of InfoSec stuff. I do have a few things on my list here that will come up. So I am really interested in questions, commentary from the peanut gallery, whatever else it may be, just to make it a little bit more interesting and help me try and wake up a little bit. So first things first, because it is another week, just like every other week in many ways, the sponsor pieces. So this week, Microsoft Reactor. You may have heard of Microsoft before. Their Reactor program, which is something that I've in the past managed to be a good part of. So Microsoft has reactors all the way around the world, different environments where people can go in and get a lot of support from the Microsoft folks starting projects. Reactor community for workshops, panels, and events to expand your skill set across a range of technologies and topic areas. And I spent a bunch of time at the Reactor in Sydney, and then a bunch of time with various other Microsoft reactors in other parts of the world as well. I don't know when I'll be doing that next. I'm pretty sure it's not going to be this year. Maybe Sydney this year. I'm going to talk about our COVID status as well today, because I haven't mentioned that for a while, and I know people are kind of interested in what it looks like in places around the world. Oh, Scott, aren't you meant to be at a racetrack, Scott? What are you chiming in here for? But yeah, I've been jealously looking at your pictures. I think it's going to be some new tires on the GTR on some track days very, very soon. So anyway, I'll come back to that. I'll talk about that once it actually happens. So one thing that a couple of people did raise over the last week is apparently it's 4 years of these videos now. I had not actually kept track of it. Like, I see when they're big round numbers. So this is 210. Obviously 200 was 10 weeks ago? Crikey, it was a long time ago already. Anyway, these videos I started doing just as something to kind of augment the content I was writing. In a way, I guess, trying to get a little bit more personality into things. Since Scott's comment, he won. Did the car stay upright or was it upside down? That's the main thing. Keep car upright. So anyway, I started the videos as a bit of personality beyond just the written word. And I have so far not missed a single one, regardless of where I've been in the world, or regardless of how messed up the world has gotten, or regardless of the things going on in my personal life. Every single one of these I have still done, and the intention is to keep doing them. I want to try and get out a little bit more and do a few more. So obviously in the past, I used to sort of be traveling and I'd do them in different places, and it would just be sometimes boring hotel rooms, other times interesting places. I ordered a new GoPro the other day, the new Hero 9, which just launched. So the intention is to try and take that outdoors a little bit, and maybe we'll do some like jet ski updates or something like that. So that could be a bit of fun. But yeah, 210, 4 years. I think I've gotten a lot more grey hair in the last 4 years. I've also got to wear a hat now. Just kidding. Well, not kidding about the grey hairs, but I'm wearing a hat because I got up so damn early, and I have not made myself up, as they say. So look, on the COVID side of things and the impact it's having on us here, I was just pulling the stats up this morning. So we've kind of gone a bit like much of the rest of the world, in that there's been parts of the country that have had a second wave, as they say. And we've been really good here in my state of Queensland, and as a refresher, Queensland is twice the size of Texas, so it's a big state, and we've got 5.1 million people, and we've done exceptionally well. So looking at our stats here, out of those 5.1 million people, we've had 6 deaths, which is just remarkable. I would assume that we would have normally had many more than that just from flu. So that is exceptional to have done that. We've got 5 active cases. We went up to about 27 or something the other day, back down to 5 now. The one that's been a real worry in Australia is our most southern state, Victoria. Now, they had a serious full-on second wave where, when you think about us having had, I think at our peak here in Queensland, certainly the last few months, we've had like 27 active cases or something. They were having like 700 new cases a day down there. Now, it's a larger state, but it's still, I think, only about 8 million people or something. So they got really smashed. And they've actually come back really good now. So they're back down. The last few days have been down to teens in terms of new cases each day. And their active cases are down to 482. So that's getting a lot better. And, the country seems to be going mostly well again. But we kind of thought that a few months ago as well. And then things went really downhill. So I think as we sort of start heading towards Christmas and everything, it'll get interesting just to sort of see whether we can maintain these numbers, particularly as people do like to travel quite a bit in Australia. I have no expectation of traveling overseas. I honestly think for probably another year. I got invited to a conference in Saudi Arabia the other day it was end of Feb, start of March. I was sort of saying to them, I was like, what are you, crazy? Like, why on earth would you plan an in-person conference and invite international speakers at all in this climate? And as much as we want to speculate about what the world will look like in, how far away is that? October, November, December, January, February, 5 months. Like, speculating about 5 months out is one thing, but trying to make commitments that you have to make many months in advance as an international speaker is just nuts. So that's that bit. Looking at the comments here. What are you doing on so early? I'll tell you what, I'll talk about the time frame thing in a moment, because I've got a list of things here I want to go through. And one of them is the holiday activities bit. So I've got speaking with Fed in advance. Okay, I'm not quite sure about that one. Scott, I've just had an event in April 2021 cancelled. Yeah, well, honestly, like, how do you plan that? And as Scott and I have spent so much time traveling to conferences around the world and so much time with conference organizers as well, I think we've got pretty good insight into how much effort and forward planning has to go into any decent sized conference. So I think the chances of any of that happening anytime soon is pretty much dead. But having said that, and I'll sort of skip around on my schedule of items here, that said, so many of these events are going online. Now, what's really interesting is that all of these conferences are going, okay, we can't do anything in person, but we still want to do stuff, so let's go online. We're going to do something different, and then everyone says we're going to be different. Now, last week I mentioned that Active was doing a whiskey tasting as part of what would have normally been the AusCert conference in person, literally a stone's throw away from here. In fact, Scott and I did a video from there last year, where it's probably about a 10-minute walk from here to the conference, which is amazing because normally everything I was doing was on the other side of the world. Now, they did the whiskey tasting thing. That actually went really well, I thought. It had a good sort of number of people there. It was a little bit of fun, a little bit of personality. So there are ways of doing these things that get a little bit closer to where it used to be, but it's still just a very, very different experience, particularly as a speaker. It's frankly much less fulfilling. I spoke at Microsoft Ignite this week, at Microsoft Ignite, which was in the form of a Q&A with a Microsoft employee and a good friend of mine, Aaron Thomas. And we spoke a bunch about cloud and Azure and how we Pwn. And that was great, but fundamentally different experience. And it's pros and cons, right? So we don't get to go and have the beers like I've done with John on the chat here so many times before in Belgium, or with Scott as well. We don't get to do that. But by the same token, it's like I get out of my pool, I come upstairs, I do the thing, I go back to the pool. And I'm not jet lagged when I get back to the pool. And that is actually really nice. So from the perspective of sort of consistency and stability in life, it's actually been fantastic. But it's just a very, very different experience. All right, so looking at some of the comments in here. IoT devices are really cool and we can do cool things at our home with them. How concerned are you about their security, and can we do anything besides not using them? I'm sure they're fine. I'm sure they're probably not fine. I do have a whole thing here on Now I do. I've got a whole point here on IoT. I just did some more IoT stuff this morning because what else are you going to do at that hour of the day? So let's have a bit of a chat about some of the holiday stuff I was mentioning. So for folks that are interested, it's school holidays here at the moment, and we have been maxing out every single day with school holiday things. Now, yesterday we decided to go deep sea fishing. So this is a coastal city. We live on the water. A lot of fishing charters. Now, I'd been on a fishing charter like 15 years ago, and I just remember everyone's sick, like violently sick. So this time we were kind of prepared. Took all the meds and things the day before, and then the morning of, and went out probably about 10 to 15K offshore. And the thing is, you had to be on the boat at 5:15 in the morning. So I got up at 4 o'clock, but then my brain's going around, got to get up. So at like 3 a.m., I'm awake. And the day before, I just had too much other stuff on my brain. And what's happening is I'm waking up at like 3:30 in the morning. I've got a million things on my mind, and I just go, stuff it. I go to bed at like 9:30 anyway. So it's like 6 hours. I'll get up and I'll do things. So now I'm sort of in this pattern, which I need to break, try and get a bit more sleep. But, it's like 5:20 in the morning here. The kids are still sound asleep. By the time they're up, I've done this. I've done a bunch of IoT stuff I'll talk about, done my emails and some accounting. I put the roof racks on my car to go mountain biking with my son and his friends today as well. So this is one of the things that's in our schedule. We've got dirt go-karts on Sunday. You'd like that, Scott. It's going to be really good fun. We've been out. What else have we been doing? Wakeboarding the other day. So got the kids some wakeboarding lessons with one of the local world champions, which was really, really cool. So they actually loved that. Been playing tennis yesterday. What else? I put everything in my diary, even the kid holiday things have to go in my diary. Otherwise, I forget them. Had friends over the day before for a pool party for hours and hours, which was really good. When I had ribs the night before that, kids love ribs. My son loves ribs. Electrician over doing a bunch of things I'll come back to very shortly. Birthday parties, bouncing castles, friends visiting, like just absolutely maxing out every day, which is good. That's the way I like to have my holidays. They're holidays. All right, looking at the comments here. Incidentally, fishing charter. So because I posted something about going fishing, and it was just a nice photo, so I knew people were going to ask about the fish. I was like, okay, I'll post a photo of the fish. And when I post a photo of the fish, I knew that there'd be a comment somewhere in there about either people who don't like fishing, and it's not that I'm a big fisher person, but the kids wanted to go, or sustainability or environmental things like that. So I think we end up coming home with like 2 fish each, which are in the fridge. And I was going to eat them last night, but just too tired. So they will be cooked and they will be eaten. The kids got some trevally, so about yay big. What's yay big? About, let's say, a foot long, foot and a bit, which was good fun. What else did we get? A jewfish, a flathead. So, yeah, I got to figure out how we're going to cook those. But anyway, that'll be the thing tonight. All right, so comment here. What is your best books? I don't have the patience for books. Actually, this is part of just the life now of everyone consuming information in tiny bites, but I have not read a book for a very long time. But I have a lot on my bookshelf so that it looks impressive. But think about it, some of the ones that are really good, which I do recall reading. In fact, a few things come to mind. Just about anything by Malcolm Gladwell is really interesting. So Malcolm Gladwell coined the term the tipping point. So that's a great book. There's another one called Blink, which is really interesting about how we make sort of micro decisions based on small amounts of information. But there's all this subconscious stuff in the back of your brain, which you've learned over the years that causes you to make very fast decisions, sometimes good ones, sometimes bad ones. Outliers is really interesting as well. So Outliers I find especially cool because it's very much about what makes people really successful. And yeah, he'd talk about people like Bill Gates. He'd talk about, say, successful basketball players as well. And the sort of the main takeaway is a combination of really hard work and good luck. And I've always said this as well, even for myself. It's like there's a shitload of hard work, but I've also been very lucky with things. So, for example, the basketball players, there was an unequal distribution of players born at a particular time of the year. And the reason for that is that when you're a kid and you're playing in age groups, and the age groups are by year, if you're a kid who's potentially almost a year older than the other kid next year, when you're like 10 years old, that is a massive advantage to have 1 year. So let's say the cutoff date is the 1st of January. If you were born on the 2nd of January, then you're going to be really, really old compared to the kids that are in there and they were born at the end of December. Or is it the other way around? You know what I mean. So that was interesting. The Bill Gates bit was like, look, the guy's obviously super smart and talented, but he was very fortunate that his mother worked in a school and had access to computers and things like that. So it's just kind of curious to look at a combination of where luck factors in, but the fact that in order to capitalize on the luck, you had to actually be smart and dedicated as well. So that was really good. There's a really good book called We Are Anonymous from what's her last name? Parmy Olson or something like that. So she wrote a really fascinating book looking into sort of the hacktivist kind of culture. So that was a great book too. Let's see what else in here, in the comments here. So that was the book stuff. John's drinking Duvel from a proper Duvel glass because you get in trouble in Belgium if you don't drink the beer from the right glass. There's a comment in here about Bill Gates' mother being IBM top manager. Yeah, like I honestly can't recall that was, and I don't know my Gates history. I did read the Bill Gates book many, many years ago. I wrote a biography ages ago. I think it was an autobiography, probably like 20 years ago. From my recollection in Outliers in Gladwell's book, it was her role at a school. So I'm not sure what happened with IBM, but regardless, he had good luck. But he's also obviously really smart, and you kind of need both. Now, you can really only control one part of that, which is your dedication, hard work, and learning and everything. And then you've got to hopefully get lucky as well if you want to be successful. What's that saying? The harder I work, the luckier I get. Seems apt. Okay, so IoT stuff. I mentioned IoT. Not a whole lot has happened in the last week. In fact, I was chatting with Scott saying what we really should be doing is we should be doing like a cyber broken, which is the chats we've been doing just about how messed up InfoSec stuff is, about IoT, because he's been doing a bunch of IoT stuff as well. So if you'd like to see Scott and I rant on for a couple of hours about our experiences with IoT, leave your comments below, yada, yada. So we might do that at some point. But so the thing I was just doing then, I've actually found that IoT has solved other problems which I tried to solve more traditionally. And I'll give you a good example. So in my garage, I've got a closet where the kids put all their stuff. So they sort of, rather than come in with like their school bags and their tennis bags and everything and dump them on the floor, they go through the garage, they slide open cupboard doors, and then they've got a large cupboard and hooks and shelves, and everything's very organized. And the school stuff goes in there, except it's a bit dark. And I went, no problems. What I'll do is I'll go down to Bunnings, which is a hardware store, and I'll get these motion sensitive lights. So they're lights with motion sensors built into them. Nice sort of long LED ones. Put one on each shelf so that they've got great light. And it turns out that they're shit. So what I mean by shit is that the motion sensors just weren't triggering at the right time. Like you'd open the cupboard doors and you'd be standing right in front of it and the lights wouldn't come on. And then you'd walk away, or you'd turn them on manually, and then you'd walk away and they wouldn't go off. They're just super, super flaky. But really, really good lights, you know, bright, right size, all this sort of thing. So I ended up repurposing one of the IoT switches that was on the coffee machine. I'll come back to it. It's not on the coffee machine in a moment. I put that in the garage, and then I took one of these Xiaomi motion sensors, and this was my job this morning. I ordered about a dozen of these the other day. Put one of those in the garage, and now every time you open the door, these are super reliable. It goes okay, light goes on, and then I give it like a 5-minute delay of no motion before light goes off. And that was like literally a 5-minute job. Now that I've got Home Assistant and decons and all the other things sort of set up and working. Now, the reason I took the IoT switch off the coffee machine is the IoT switch I have is a Wemo one that I've had for probably the last 5 years. That doesn't measure power usage. Now, I wanted one that measures power usage because I wanted to, on the coffee machine, not just be able to turn it on and off, but also be able to identify when the power on the switch was on, but the coffee machine wasn't actually drawing any power. And the reason that's relevant is because the coffee machine can run out of water, and it's got a pressure switch built into it, just factory. So a really basic sort of thing where it's got a water tank inside it. Obviously, if you use enough water, pressure comes up, triggers the switch, and it turns off the machine. Now, this doesn't necessarily just happen while you're using it, because sometimes the boiler can go, hey, we need a bit more water in here, draws more water up into it, empties the tank. Now we've got a problem. The other thing that can sometimes happen is because of the way the switch is positioned, it gets bumped. So like the cleaners will be here, they'll bump it. Now the switch has come out. So it's like, okay, if the switch is unavailable, we've got a problem. So there's a few automations in Home Assistant, and I set this up to sort of recognize different states. So there's a state which is like the switch is on and the coffee machine is on. There's a state which is the switch is on and the coffee machine is off, for example, because out of water. It's another state which is the switch is off. It's another state which is the switch is unavailable. And when it changes to a state that needs action, so for example, the switch has been bumped and now it's unavailable, or the coffee machine is out of water, then I get a push notification on my watch, and also the coffee machine, or not coffee machine, the Sonos, which sits next to the coffee machine, does a text-to-speech and it talks and it says, hey, you know, coffee machine's unplugged, for example. So there's that. Now I saw a comment here, someone's asking how the Shellys were going. Now the Shellys, which were still are the little relays, IoT switches. So I put a couple of those in my entertainment room, and this is almost finished actually. I'm going to show some nice photos of this, or do a video or something there later on because it looks epic. And I have two Shellys in the wall, one to control the downlights on the roof, and then one to control a light behind a massive mirror that I've got on the wall. And there has been a problem in that the massive mirror, which has got Philips Hue all the way around, it's got a 10-meter perimeter, so a 10-meter set of Philips Hues. Every now and then they'd kind of flicker off, and then at some point they just died. But when they were flickering off, I also noticed that the LED light on the button on the wall was also flickering off. So it wasn't just the hue, it was the power to the whole circuit. Now, the electrician was over last week, and he went through and he just redid a bunch of the wiring because he said, look, you know, maybe we've had a wire come loose or something. And it was still problematic. So I think one of the Shellys has actually died. In fact, I think two of the Shellys might have died, but I haven't been able to reliably test that yet. And I don't want to test it myself on 240 volt, but I will go and test it on 12 volt because I can't kill myself with that. So that the Shellys for the most part have been good, but that has been a little bit flaky. So what I've got to do now is get the guy back again and start going through other switches and put more Shellys on those other switches. One of the things I did actually discover during the week is that the RJ45 sockets that I've got on the walls in pretty much every room here, because the house was wide when I got here, I can pop those off the wall and I can put the Ubiquiti in-wall access points straight over the top because you can actually mount them on the same screw holes. They just sit sideways like this instead of vertically. So that's really, really cool. So they're sending me a bunch more of them, and I can now go through the whole house and just put access points on every single one of those spots where I used to have just like dumb wall plates. That will allow me to take out some of the access points, which were the big round disc ones, and I had like sitting on the floor against the wall, and they just didn't look pretty. So more networking in more places there. Now that's also handy because looking at my network map in Ubiquiti, particularly because there's so many IoT things in the kids' room now because all the lights are IoT and each one has its own IP address. I look at the map and there's just like this massive cluster of addresses all attaching to one access point. And now I can sort of distribute that out a little bit more. Yeah, Scott's made a point. I'm going to need more IPv4 addresses soon. Well, I can always just put it on different subnets. So I'm putting all the IoT stuff on a dedicated SSID. So I do have an IoT SSID. I haven't VLANed it again as I had done with my previous Ubiquiti network because frankly, it was just a complete pain in the ass for many reasons. And I've got to come back to the security discussion in a moment as well. So I can easily create another network and I can just take all the IoT Wi-Fi connected stuff, IoT access point connected stuff, and just put it on a separate subnet. So I can sort of buy myself more IPv4 addresses by just putting them on different subnets. But I still got a way to go there because at the moment I've got, I think it's about 65 different connected devices across the house, which of course is every single one of the lights and all that sort of thing. So I do have some headroom there, for want of a better term. So that bit is going well. I've managed to repurpose all my version 1 Ubiquiti stuff. So this was when I originally installed Ubiquiti a few years ago, and I bought a cloud key and a security gateway and a switch and access points and all these separate things, and they weren't rack mounted or anything. Now I've got a Dream machine and it's in a rack and a switch a rack-mounted switch and everything as well. So I took all the old stuff and I gave it to the electrician who's doing all the work, because I'd kind of want him to build up this IoT capability as well. So, and that's good for him because he can wire his house really easily as well. So he's now jumping on the Ubiquity train, which is good fun. So comment here, I love the Ubiquity stuff. Just leveled up my home network with a UDM access point fab stuff and just works. Yeah, it is amazing stuff, and it works really, really well. It's been super reliable. I did notice one glitch the other day, though. I had a bunch of my devices, so things like my phone connects to the network. It has a weird-looking name on it because the name will be something like whatever the device broadcasts, which isn't necessarily a good logical name. So I go through and I name every device. So things like the lights that are in the roof here, it's Troy's downlight on the window side or Troy's downlight on the bathroom side. So they all get names. And I also give them icons. So you can go through and set an icon so that when they appear on the map, they look pretty cool. And I noticed that probably about half a dozen of them had lost the names and lost the icons. So I kind of went, do I try and restore from a backup? No, I'll just go and change them. So that was the one glitch that I've had recently. The other thing is the media room, where I've been doing a bunch of stuff with the mirror and the downlights and everything. It's got a very dark wall. There's like a dark wallpaper because it's mostly like a movie watching room. It's a little bit of a home theater setup now. And I got some face plates, so you can actually get like literally plates that go over the front of the Ubiquity in-wall access points, and you can get them in black. So it looks super cool now because I got speakers that I've had for 20 plus years all repainted in black against a dark wall. The power points that are on the wall are black, and then the Ubiquity access point is sitting there in black now as well. So again, I'll share some more photos of that later on because that one looks pretty good. Someone's right about my lights going all Skynet on me. Oh, back to security thing. So security. Apparently that's important with your IoT. So I guess the approach I'm taking is that wherever I can avoid connecting anything to the cloud in terms of individual devices, I don't. So the Shellys, for example, aren't cloud enabled. They can be cloud enabled. But having said that, my home assistant, I am using Nabu Casa, which I'll talk about more. I've got to finish the blog series actually, which does give me remote access to things. But there are very, very relevant reasons why I want to do that. So for example, yesterday, I'm out fishing and I get a notice from Australia Post saying your package is coming. And there were a couple of things I was expecting, one of them somewhat valuable. And I went, okay, cool. So literally opened up Home Kit, the Apple one on the phone, opened the garage door, which opens up a door to like the internal boundary of the property. It doesn't get you in the house. There's nothing that you can't get by just climbing over a fence, but it means that Posty can come in, drop stuff in there. And then I've got the Ubiquity security cameras so I can see when that happens. And incidentally, the Ubiquity cameras do integrate back into Home Assistant and they do trigger an event when there's motion. So if you set up your motion zones, and one of the things I've been doing is just getting the zones right and the sensitivity right, so that when there's motion, that creates an event in Home Assistant. Now that's useful because then I can go through Home Assistant and say, for example, when there's motion out the front and it's after sunset, once I get the Shelly on the light switches to do the front, then I can just automatically turn on lights. So you end up with all these little sort of sensors and all these other things that are IoT enabled, and you can start to sense a state and then trigger a change of state on something else. But you got to sort of have the sensors and the triggerable states. So that's the first thing, sort of not making stuff cloud enabled that doesn't need to be, and then minimizing the footprint of what that is. With things like cameras, so I'm conscious of the privacy side of things. I wouldn't have any cameras that point at anything that I wasn't okay with potentially being visible at some time. So all of the cameras I have here point at publicly observable locations, places you can come and look over a fence or see from the road or from the canal on the other side. So I'm conscious that I don't want people sort of looking at my camera because, let's face it, there's been a lot of cameras that have been left publicly facing before. But if they do, they won't see anything that you couldn't see from the road anyway. And then I set a relatively short data retention period. So they're doing constant record. So there's a 4K camera that way and a 4K camera that way, recording 24/7, but still having events that you can go back and see on a timeline. But then I set the data retention policy to get rid of the data after, I won't say how long, but a set period of time, because I just don't need to keep it for perpetuity either. So there's that bit of things. Then let's talk about the VLAN bit. I had VLAN IoT stuff in my version 1 Ubiquity network, and it just constantly became a shit fight trying to make stuff work. And there's a few reasons for that. So number one is that I would put things like my iPhone, which I'm pretty confident around the security posture of, or my Windows 10 fully patched and updated machines on the primary network, which is fine. And then I would put all the IoT things, including things like the Sonos, on the IoT network. And I would allow the primary network to see into the IoT network, but not the other way around. So if you were to jump on the IoT network, or let's say my dishwasher gets compromised, I connected the dishwasher. I'll talk about that in a moment. Let's say that, or more specifically, something like the washing machine. So the Samsung washing machine has got IoT built into it. So if that was to get compromised, then it would just be stuck in this IoT VLAN. And so long as someone couldn't break out of the VLAN, which would be another problem if they could do that, then it's basically like, okay, well, how could you mess with my IoT things? And the constant problem I kept having is that because this is on sort of the primary network, if I try to pair an IoT device, very often it wants to inherit the settings of the network that you're already on. So it's like, okay, get off this network, then get onto the IoT network. Don't stay on the IoT network because now I can't access other things on the primary network, which I need to get from here. And then I had problems with things like the Sonos, where the way the Sonos app communicates with the Sonos device, they do need to be on this. I'll rephrase it. It's not they have to be on the same network, but it was trying to communicate from the IoT network back to the mobile device. Now, I believe that there is a port somewhere that can be opened for UDP that allows some sort of multicast protocol or something to come back the other way. But you end up getting this absolute mess where you've got all of these crazy firewall rules for different devices to do things between them. And then what happens when it updates at some point? And here's the other thing, how are you going to keep it all updated? So where possible, I've just said automatically update firmware. Okay, great. What happens if it updates and then it uses a different port for some reason? What happens when something doesn't work and you're left going, is it not working because it changed a port? Is it not working because it updated and nuked something? Is it not working just because it's dead? Like there's all these different things that can go wrong. And one of the things that can now no longer go wrong, at least at the moment, is the fact that it's VLANed off other things. So it is a very, very imperfect world, this IoT stuff at the moment. Someone's saying here, I saw you took your kids for fishing session. Keep doing that. This new generation needs people teaching about nature values. So yeah, Garth, if you just joined, you might have missed the other bits, but we've been out wakeboarding, we're mountain biking today, both the kids on separate occasions because they both go at different paces. And then I go at a different pace to them as well. And it's just such a nice nature spot here. So we're out every single day, riding, walking, swimming, something or other. Still closing all the exercise rings. I think I'm about to pass 200 days worth of closing exercise, every exercise ring every single day. So it has been very good fitness-wise. So there's that bit. Now, something else that I had on here as well, Activision. So apparently, getting back on the InfoSec stuff, apparently Activision has had, let's call it some sort of a security incident. And the news was along the line of 500,000 Call of Duty players have been hacked. I'm air quoting for people listening, hacked. As best I can tell, this is account takeover. As best I can tell, it looks like credential stuffing because Activision has said, we haven't suffered a security incident. Here's all this guidance about how to create a good password. So I think that it's kind of curious to see like yet another pretty major name go through this whole credential stuffing thing, assuming this is the case. And I did put out a tweet earlier on and asked if anyone had any evidence to the contrary. It doesn't seem that anyone does yet. But another really big name to sort of go through that kind of pain. And it's interesting looking at the responses from people. Because I had an argument. We had a robust discussion with someone on one of the threads where he's throwing Activision under the bus. And I'm sort of saying, well, this looks like credential stuffing. So if people are having their accounts taken over because they've used the same crappy username and password all over the place, there is some responsibility on behalf of the person that's using the same crappy username and password. And it's just curious that time and time again, people don't seem to consider that maybe their security posture is within their control. It is not just the responsibility of the organization. So, as best I can tell, Activision looks like credential stuffing. People still upset. Shared responsibility in security. Activision needs to do better. They shouldn't be having credential stuffing attacks like this, where there's hundreds of thousands of players impacted in this day and age. Not a big name like that. People need to do better. Stop using stupid passwords. All right, so looking at a comment here, what jet ski do you run? The fastest one I could get. It is a 300 horsepower supercharged Sea-Doo. So I'm still running that. We did go out jet skiing a couple of days ago, my son and I. So here's the cool thing with jet skis. One of many cool things. Kids are allowed to ride them. Anyone's allowed to ride them. Doesn't matter how old. Don't have to have a license. You do have to have someone who has a license on the jet ski with you, and the lanyard has to be attached to you. So since my kids were even like 5 years old, they could drive the jet ski, and I would have the lanyard. So the lanyard goes in the little, for those of you not familiar with the way lanyards and water sports craft work, it's a kill switch. So it's literally clipped onto my life vest, and then it's clipped into a little clip on the front of the jet ski. And if I was to pull the clip out, it just kills the engine. So now for my son, who's almost 11, he can ride that, and he can ride it very, very well, and he can blast around. And so long as I'm sitting on the back with him, then it's all cool. So yeah, we've been out in the jet ski quite a bit. Scott's talking about me crashing jet skis. Now, you don't really, I guess you could crash a jet ski. It was more like I had one jet ski that went upside down. That didn't end well for it. And another one, I still don't know what happened to it. It just stopped. The engine stopped. Jet skis can be super flaky. There are two Yamahas, though. So the Yamahas I did not have good experiences with. I do, so far, have only good experiences with the Sea-Doo. And they've just launched a whole new range as well, but I don't think there's really much more power, so probably don't need to worry about that. So look, I think that is everything on my list today. I'm hoping over the next week I'll get on top of a whole bunch more blogging things. I do really want to build out that whole series around IoT. I definitely want to get that done. And I'll see how I go this week. I'll have some other personal stuff I'll start talking about this coming week as well, which I'm very happy about, very excited about. And that might be something that I cover on Friday. So let's see how we go with that. I will get back on track, and I will do this Friday evening, my time. So looking at the clock, it'd be like 12 hours later than now, which will work well for folks in Europe. So thanks very much for watching. I'm going to push this out as the podcast as well. And yeah, hopefully try and get some of that blogging out this week too. See you later, everyone.